Mr. Vice President, nice to talk to you again, sir.
Good to be with you, Greta. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, the court has ruled that you must testify to conversations leading up to January 6th with the former President of the United States. Do you intend to appeal that order?
Well, obviously, Greta, you know there's a limited amount that I can say about those proceedings, but when I received a subpoena from the Justice Department, I said that I thought it was not only unprecedented to ask a vice president to come into court to testify about a president with whom they serve, but I also thought it was unconstitutional, believing that the Constitution's speech and debate protections applied to me when I was serving as president of the Senate on January the 6th. So I can tell you that I'm pleased that the court accepted our argument and recognized that the Constitution's provision about speech and debate does apply to the vice president. But the way they sorted that out and the requirements of my testimony going forward are a subject of our review right now, and I'll have more to say about that in the days ahead.
All right, so it's not decided whether to appeal or not, at least at this point. It just happened today that we're learning about it. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Well, we're evaluating the court's decision, but again, I do want to say that I am pleased that the federal judge, really for the first time in history, recognized that the Constitution's speech and debate provisions do apply to the vice president when one is serving as president of the Senate. But how they sorted that out and what other testimony might be required, we're currently reviewing. But look, let me be clear. I have nothing to hide. I have a Constitution to uphold. I upheld the Constitution on January 6th. I believe we did our duty that day under the Constitution of the United States. And in this matter, I thought it was important that we stand on that constitutional principle again. But we're currently speaking to our attorneys about the proper way forward. And as I said, we'll have a decision in the coming days.
And it may just be that it's the former president's duty to appeal if he objects to the executive privilege aspect of it. So we'll see what happens there. All right, now let me turn to Chairman of the Senate Intel Committee, Mark Warner. He is not happy with the Department of Justice, the Biden administration, because as Senate Chair of the House, the Senate Intel Committee, he wants to see the contents of the classified documents that were found at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago, President Biden, and at your home as well. Do you have any objection to Senator Mark Warner seeing the contents of the classified documents at your home?
Well, I would have no objection whatsoever to him seeing the documents. The members of the Senate Intel Committee deal with classified documents on a regular basis, and the materials that were inadvertently packed and stored at my residence, we discovered earlier this year, out of an abundance of caution, we engaged in a review. We turned those over to the FBI immediately and have been continuing to cooperate with the process. But I'd be very happy to cooperate with any further inquiry from members of the Senate, and look forward to putting this matter behind us in the near future.
All right, well, so he's going to have to take his beef up then with the Justice Department on that and the Biden administration. All right, now turning to global leadership. You've said there's a vacuum in global leadership. You have met President Putin, I think, and I think you probably met President Xi. Can you explain, if you were president right now, what would you do about global leadership?
Well, history teaches us, Greta, that weakness arouses evil. And I do believe that the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Biden administration's efforts in the first 2 years to literally beg Iran to re-enter the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, the capitulation to Russia on Nord Stream 2, have all of that has emboldened the enemies of freedom around the world. And American leadership has been lacking in so many areas. I mean, even after the Biden administration began to provide lethal support to the courageous soldiers in Ukraine, they've been delivering that support on a slow basis. I mean, recently in January, we pledged that we would send 33 Abrams tanks Here we are in March, and the Secretary of the Army says that it could be over a year before those tanks are delivered. President Biden says that we're there as long as it takes, but Greta, with American leadership, it shouldn't take that long. I mean, we're the leader of the free world. We're the arsenal of democracy. We ought to be able to call on our allies in Europe to lean into this effort in Ukraine, to give the Ukrainians the ability to repel the Russian invasion. You've been on the ground in Ukraine. My family traveled into Ukraine now more than 11 months ago. We met with people that had experienced that devastation. It's vitally important, I believe, that we give the Ukrainian military the resources they need to win that fight against the Russian invasion. But again, I believe that the administration has been slow there, but they've been lacking in leadership. And when we aren't the leader of the free world just isn't being led, Greta. And so we need renewed American leadership on the global stage.
Well, we are where we are right now. We all know how we got here. But if you were, let's say, if you were President of the United States, in light of the fact Putin has announced that he is going to move tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus, and they're going to be there probably in storage by July 1st, what would you do? Because that seems to me to escalate matters, because, the Poles are terrified of what's happening. Everybody in Europe is terrified. But it does seem that this movement by Putin ups the ante. It escalates tension. So what would you do?
Well, it smacks to me evidence of desperation by Putin, that every time he gets into a corner, he mentions nuclear weapons, and now the threat about moving tactical weapons into Belarus is just the latest. But look, peace comes through strength. And I believe the Ukrainian soldiers have demonstrated the ability to fight and to repel the Russian invasion. We give them what they need, and they're going to be able to drive forward and reclaim their sovereignty. And I believe it's in our nation's interest to assist them in doing so. It used to be called the Reagan Doctrine, Greta. Back in the days of President Reagan, we had this deal where if you were willing to fight the communists in your country with your soldiers, we would give you the means to do that so we didn't have to fight them here. And it's the same principle that brought the Soviet Union to its knees. And I believe that in this moment, it's absolutely essential that we continue to give Ukraine what they need. We don't allow Putin to distract the world or diminish support through his threats of moving tactical nuclear weapons. We just need to remain strong and stand with the Ukrainians. And again, I want to say, give them what they need much more rapidly than the Biden administration has been doing. Let's get them the tanks, let's get them the aircraft, let's get them the anti-air ballistic missile systems, and I believe they've demonstrated they can win this fight.
So you don't think Putin's going to break bad, because he's got quite an arsenal of tactical weapons. I think there are about 2,000 nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons that he has. I think often we look at it through Western eyes that we would never do anything like take the first strike with nuclear weapons. But he does seem to be upping the ante, and he does seem to be a man who's desperate. Do you not worry at all that it's more than just saber rattling?
Look, I think it's incumbent on any American leader to be concerned when the subject of nuclear weapons comes up. I don't mean to diminish that, but what I'm telling you is, having been vice president in the only administration in the 21st century where Putin didn't even try to redraw international lines by force, that I believe that Putin's Russia responds to American strength. Literally, Putin moved against the nation of Georgia during the Bush administration. He grabbed Crimea during the Obama administration. And of course, he's rolled with the Russian invasion into Ukraine under the Biden administration. But under the Trump-Pence administration, we made historic investments in our military. We stood with our allies, stood up to our enemies, let our military take the fight to ISIS, sent cruise missiles into Syria when they used chemical weapons. All of that American strength, I believe, contributed to the fact that Russia stayed across its border, did not try to redraw international lines by force, and the answer today remains American strength.
All right, let me ask you the question you're always going to get asked by the media. It's our parlor game. I'm not going to ask you whether you're running for president. That's the one you probably think I'm going to ask. But I'm going to ask you sort of a sidestep one. I know you're going back to Iowa. When are you going to make the decision? I'm not asking your decision, but when are you?
Yeah.
Do you have a date certain when you're going to make the decision whether you're going to run or not?
You know, we really believe that for anyone that would be serious about entering the race for the Republican nomination for president, that sometime about the spring or early summer, that decision has to be made. And we're on that timetable. I expect we won't get out of spring without Karen and I having a clear sense of our calling. But I can tell you, we're getting an awful lot of encouragement around the country. Look, this country's in a lot of trouble. I hear again and again that what people want to see is people with experience, people with a clear vision, a willingness to defend freedom, support our military, support law enforcement, secure our borders, but also get this economy back on track, confront record inflation, begin to deal with the debt crisis facing our country, and push back on the radical left's agenda to trample on our values and on our most cherished liberties. So we're reflecting on all of those things. As you said, I'll be in Iowa again tomorrow, and we really look forward to listening and discerning about what role we might play in the days ahead. But I do promise to keep you posted, Greta.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Nice talking to you again, sir.
Great talking to you.